Hi everyone, my name is Oonagh Proudfoot and I am the Executive Director of Alumni Affairs at Acadia University. And I'm so glad that you've joined me today for goal setting. Acadia was a smart choice, now let's talk about smart goals. So a couple of things about me before I get started. First of all, it's kind of like I want to do this and say hi and be super excited for you, but I realize maybe that's a little over the top. Super excited that you have chosen Acadia. As you can see next to my name, there were two numbers written there, and I'm frankly afraid to say that those are my graduation years, so I've been around the block a little while. But pointing it out just to say to you that I have graduated from Acadia University twice. I came here in 1989 and pursued my undergrad degree and then later did a master's degree. And I've been working at the university for 21 years. Most recently, just in July, actually appointed to the position of Executive Director, Alumni Affairs. So to say that I drank the juice many moons ago would be an understatement. I live in the town of Wolfville, and I'm also a municipal councillor with the municipality. So I tell you that just to say that I absolutely love the university, love the town. Obviously, I'm supposed to say that because I want to put your minds all at ease for choosing Acadia, but I truly believe it. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about why that is as we progress through the session here today. I start the session by acknowledging that I am privileged to be greeting you from Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of Mi'kmaq people. To me, this means that we are able to gather respectfully and share ideas, notions, and knowledge with one another in a community of caring people. The 6 sacred teachings, if you're not familiar with them, are love, respect, courage, honesty, wisdom, humility, and truth. And these teachings are particularly relevant in this session today, but even more broadly in the journey that you're about to embark on. Also like to acknowledge with our community who's joining us today that I identify with she, her, and hers. So a bit about my journey. I mentioned that I started at Acadia in 1989. I'm just kidding. I'm not actually going to start back in 1989 and tell you this long-winded story of how I landed here. But I am going to tell you that I chose Acadia mostly from the urgings of my mom and dad, both of whom believed that it was a good place for me to be. So I came to Acadia and I chose a degree program that frankly ended up not being a very good fit for me. And I also struggled with the transition, with the change of scenery, with the change of requirements that were expected of me, with the type of classes. I struggled with a lot of the transition. And in December of my first year, I got the letter. And what that means is at the end of first term, a letter was sent to me by the university that basically said, you're not doing so well in your courses and with your academic grades. And if you don't shape up, we're going to ship you out. And I tell you that story because had I been at anywhere else than at Acadia, I firmly believe I probably would have ended my academic career pretty shortly thereafter. But the small community of Acadia and the small community of Wolfville helped me figure out what decisions I had made that weren't necessarily the right ones and helped me to get on track. And I tell you that story as well, partly because I want to reiterate how Acadia was a smart choice for you, but also because in terms of my overall wellness and the goals that I had set for myself for that first term and for that first year weren't necessarily realistic goals. Hindsight, as they say, is a wonderful thing, but I was fortunate enough to find my ground and continue on and succeed academically. In fact, I graduated class valedictorian 3.5 years later, and then went on to work here and teach here. So I taught here for 12 years as well. So your first year at university is going to be a big transition, and you know what, it would have been in any sort of regular sense of the word. This year in particular, everyone around you recognizes, and particularly those of us at Acadia recognize that the transition that you're about to make is very different than it has been for many of the first years before you. So paying particular attention to who you are, what you currently are, who you want to be, what you want to be, and how Acadia is going to help you in that journey is going to be a big piece of your landscape in the next little while. So hopefully I'll give you a few little pointers today, a few little buds of interest that will help you as you begin what it's going to look like in the next few weeks. Now I got to see how I'm going to transition slides here. I should have practiced this beforehand. Oh, there we go. I got it. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes to talk to you about wellness. There's a lot of words on this slide. Don't worry about it. You don't need to read them all. I don't need to read them all for that matter. But I want to talk to you a little bit about that word wellness that I've already mentioned once. And when we talk about wellness, a lot of people talk about health. They talk about, do you feel well? Are you healthy? Particularly, as I say, in this time of COVID, what are your symptoms? How do you feel? But I want you to think about wellness in a much broader context. And I want you to think about you as an individual and your overall being and what that looks like. So yeah, absolutely. Physical is a huge piece of it, right? So, your body size and shape, your susceptibility to disease, your body functioning, whether or not you get enough sleep, if you're eating well, all of those, attributes that we can pretty easily put our finger on and pretty easily define. That's only one piece of it. The next piece is social, and that refers obviously very much to the relationships that you have. The current relationships that you have and the relationships that you're going to develop over the next little while. Social is going to look very different for you and for all of us, and has looked quite different for us since March. But thanks to the virtual world, we're able to be social beings. And it's a huge part of your wellness, and it's important. And that's regardless if you're an introvert or an extrovert. There's a certain level of social wellness that's important to everyone. Then there's your emotional wellness, and that's, your ability to express emotions, control inappropriate emotions and expressions. That's still a challenge for me at my ripe old age. Feelings of self-esteem, self-confidence, all of those emotional pieces. And again, another big piece of your wellness. And I tell you that today in the context of this presentation so that you can remember that when you're being challenged in your emotional wellness, to reach out to those around you, either your new relationships or the relationships that you are physically leaving at home. But it's really important to feed that area of your wellness and continue to do so. Intellectual, that's a great one to bring up as we're talking about entering university, but it's not just formal education. It's all about your intellectual capabilities, and decision making is a big piece of that. So decision making in terms of your future and in terms of your next few months and in terms of goal setting is going to be particularly relevant in the context of the conversation today. And then the last one, which you'll see has the biggest description or the most number of words on the screen, is your spiritual wellness. And religion certainly is a huge piece of spiritual wellness if you are a religious person. Regardless if you are or aren't, spiritual wellness includes a whole array of other variables that are just as important. And it's your feeling of unity, it's your feeling of oneness with others and with nature, it's your sense of value of well-being, it's who you are and what makes you tick. Again, as we talk about goals and we talk about what the future looks like, understanding your spiritual wellness and what makes you you is incredibly important. So I just leave that with you. Those definitions, you can look them up. You can check the Goggle at any point in time to refresh what those definitions look like. But just to understand that your overall wellness has five areas, and each of them are as equally important as the next. So what does that mean in the context of goal setting and sort of what that road looks like ahead of you, that you have a huge piece of laying before you? Obviously, there are variables that are going to be out of your control, but I want you to sort of step back and think about how much of who you are and where you're going to go really lies with you. And before we get there, just to sort of springboard from the areas of wellness to goal setting, I want to talk to you a little bit about what I call the oxygen mask theory. And I believe this, I preach this, I stand on my soapbox at any point in time that I can. And what it means is, for any of you who have ever flown, of course, none of us really have recently, but if you've ever been on an airplane, you'll probably remember at the beginning of every flight when somebody comes on a speaker and says, "Attention passengers, should the cabin pressure change during flight, an oxygen mask will drop. Please put your own mask on before assisting others. Yep, you've heard it many times. Have you ever stopped to think about what that really means? What that means is you need to take care of yourself first and foremost before you consider taking care of anyone else. And I know that on the surface sounds selfish perhaps, but it's not. In this context of the oxygen mask, if you chose to put the mask on somebody else before you put your own mask on, in the matter of seconds, you would be rendered useless. So kind of an extreme example of the point I'm trying to make, but the point I'm trying to make is those areas of wellness that we just talked about are critical for you to look out for yourself in those areas and make sure that you're taking care of yourself before you sort of consider the world around you. And that factors again into goal setting and into the journey that you're about to embark on. So give some thought to what it is you want to do, where you want to be, and what your next 4 months, 8 months, year, what you want it to look like. So what I'm going to do is just tell you a little bit about what goal setting can look like. And I'm sure that anyone who's on this call right now has talked about goals before. You've probably set goals before, you've talked about objectives before, and you may even have done exactly what I'm going to suggest to you in the next 10-15 minutes before. It doesn't matter if you've done it once, 20 times, or never at all. I want you to start thinking about what some goals are that you can set for yourself in the next 4 to 8 months. In fact, let's pick 8 months, because 4 months is pretty short. It's going to fly by. What I want you to think about is selecting 2 or 3 goals. Don't select 5, don't select 6. Don't bite off more than you can chew. You are about to transition through what has been identified as the most significant transition in your life. We all go through transitions, whether or not it's starting kindergarten or primary, whether or not it's starting high school, whether or not it's getting married, having children, entering an old age home, doesn't matter. They are all considered transitions. This one that you're about to embark on is and has been referenced and researched by many as being the most significant transition that you will experience in your life. I am not trying to scare you off. In fact, I'm trying to do the exact opposite. I want you to be excited about it. It's a huge step and it's amazing. And you've, again, chosen a great place to do it. So within that transition and what it's going to look like over the next year, think about 2 or 3 goals that you want to set for yourself. And we're going to talk about how you identify what those look like. But the starting place that I'm going to encourage you to think about is those 5 areas of wellness. So if it's easier for you to sort of sit and think about what those areas of wellness look like for you right now and where you could improve upon them, then that's a great place to start. Whether or not you identify a goal that is specific to the area of physical wellness or specific to the area of intellectual wellness, doesn't matter. You'll probably choose a goal that you will find when you really dissect it, probably falls into more than one of those areas of wellness. But I encourage you to think about which areas of wellness it does affect, or which areas of wellness affects the goal that you're setting for yourself. So what's that going to look like? So when we talk about SMART goals, and again, probably none of this is new to you, but it's a really great time to revisit it. Because when I talk about that transition that you're about to make and how it's a significant transition, what you're essentially doing in a lot of ways is cleaning the slate. And what that means from so I'm a very visual person. So when I think about what that means, it's kind of like, you know what, you have all these behaviors and you have all these rituals and these lifestyles that you've probably lived for 17, 18, 19 years. Or maybe they were relatively new in the last 5 or 6. Doesn't matter. As you take this step from high school, presumably many of you on the call are coming directly out of high school. Many of you may not be. It doesn't matter. You're starting a new chapter. You're starting a new place, whether it's virtually or physically. And it's an opportunity for you to sort of go and erase the whole screen or erase the whole, I was going to say chalkboard. Boy, does that ever age me. And start with a clean slate. It's brand new. What do you want that to look like? So I could sit here and I could talk to you about academic specific goals. And absolutely, I would encourage you to think about some of them being So some of them being academic in nature. So if you're sitting there and you're thinking, okay, I know what one of my goals is. I want by the end of December to have straight A's. If that's a goal that you want to set for yourself, absolutely. We're going to get into the specifics of what a SMART goal looks like. You might be sitting there and saying, well, by December, my goal is to not be like Oonagh and not get the letter, which is a great goal to have as well. Maybe it's not as specific or as outcome oriented. Maybe it's more behavioral. So maybe it's going to be more so within 3 days of being assigned homework, I'm going to make sure my readings are done, or whatever it is the homework is. So absolutely making academic goals, which primarily would fall under intellectual wellness, but not just intellectual wellness. So don't automatically assume that because it's academic in nature, it's going to be an intellectual wellness goal. Some of them might be around eating habits. It might be around sleeping habits. Maybe you are a bit of an introvert. So maybe in terms of your social wellness and emotional wellness, your goal is going to be to make a connection with one new person a week or something like that. And I say make a connection with because it could be virtually, it could be physically, it depends on what the landscape looks like. Maybe as you transition away from home or away from some of your routines, you're going to think about broader perspective in terms of maybe it's your physical wellness in terms of, you know what, I really enjoy my physical activity time and I know I'm going to be challenged to be able to squeeze that into my schedule, but I want to make sure that by the end of the week I've gone for a run once, if you're a runner. Maybe you're not a runner and you want to start being a runner. Maybe it's around your dietary habits. Think about all of those areas and what it is that you want to prioritize for yourself. So when I gave the example of maybe by December, you're going to set the goal to have straight A's. As much as I think that is amazing, and I hope that you all have straight A's by December, and maybe it's because I told you about my first term and my first year and how it wasn't so hot academically. I might encourage you to rethink that one and maybe make it a little more of a realistic goal. So I skipped ahead to the R. I'm a little out of sync here. It's okay, I don't do anything in order. I'm from Newfoundland originally. So realistic, just in terms of we recognize that with all the changes that you're about to make, I don't think anybody expects you to have straight A's. Putting your best foot forward academically is what we expect and what we hope. So in terms of setting goals, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. So that's the acronym SMART. So anytime you're thinking about setting a goal, think through each of those and think. When you set a goal, it needs to be specific. So for you to sit there and say, I'm going to go to Acadia and I'm going to eat better. Well, that's a great goal, but that is just way too general. You need to give some thought to making it more specific. What does that mean for you? And if you're somebody who's eating maybe not so well right now in terms of your choices, maybe you don't eat regularly, maybe you only eat one meal some days and other days you eat 4 meals, you got a lot going on. So to turn it around and say, I want to eat better, again, is way too general. Pick a specific thing. So pick every day I'm going to aim to eat at least 1 serving of vegetables. Now I recognize and realize that that's not the Canadian food plan, but I'm just taking it from an extreme of maybe never eating vegetables to, okay, once a day I'm going to have a serving of vegetables. That's pretty specific. Is it measurable? At the end of the day, can you reflect back and say, I ate 1 serving of vegetables today? Yes. So it's easily measurable. Is it attainable? I really hope so. And that's coming from a mother of 2. So is it attainable to say, yes, I want to have at least 1 serving of vegetables a day? Yes. If you're sitting there and thinking, you know what, I'm going to run the Harvest Marathon in October, and you've never gone for a run in your life, that's not attainable. So it needs to be something that you can set for yourself that you will experience success in. If it's not attainable, then chances are you're going to be unsuccessful. And that's not the idea with goal setting. The idea of goal setting is to set goals that you are able to achieve so that you experience success. So attainable leads right into realistic, right? And realistic can be 2 different things. It can be whether or not it's realistic to you as an individual, generally speaking, and realistic whether or not it makes sense that it's now. So maybe it's a realistic goal for later in your life, but not so much now. So again, to take in the context of everything that's changing for you and whether or not the goal that you're setting for yourself makes sense now. And that segues nicely into the last letter, the T, for timely. Does it make sense right now? So when I talk about cleaning your slate and having a clean slate to work with, it's like an artist, and you just got this, beautiful swath in front of you, and you can pick whatever colors you want, and you can create whatever life and whatever scenario you want for yourself right now. Pick the colors in that portrait that makes sense in terms of all of those specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Does it make sense right now? So 2 types of goals, and this is kind of getting a little bit into the nitty-gritty, but it is kind of important to explain, because you can set an outcome goal for yourself. So at the end of the term, if you have straight A's, that's an outcome goal. A behavioral goal is changing a lifestyle or behavior. So you might set an outcome goal of having 4 A's or 5 A's at the end of the term, however many courses you're taking. But your behavioral goals throughout the term could be, for example, like I said, within 3 days of receiving a homework assignment, you get your homework done within 3 days. So a long-term outcome goal can be made up of smaller behavioral goals. So it's important to think about whether or not it's an outcome you want or a behavior you want to change. And I'll use that academic one again, if I may. In terms of an outcome goal of 5 A's at the end of the term, what I would suggest is the behavioral piece. Remember I said just put your best foot forward academically is probably a better type of goal to set for yourself than that outcome goal of 5 A's. To say put your best foot forward academically, we go back to whether or not that's specific enough, and it's not, right? So within that, what does that mean? Well, I'm going to go to every class. Then I go to, is that realistic? Well, absolutely aim for that, but maybe by the end of the week you say, if I've only missed 1 class this week, then that's sort of the flexibility I'm gonna give myself. If you're a super high achiever and a type A personality and you're like, yep, every class I'm gonna be in, and that's your goal for yourself each week, fantastic. If that's reasonable or realistic rather and attainable for you. And then we'll talk just quickly about objectives, and objectives often are sort of subsections of goals, and that kind of comes back to what I've already covered with you in terms of behavioral goals that can lead to an outcome goal. But the 2 other pieces of this that I want to talk to you about is what are your strategies going to be? So once you set those 2 to 3 goals for yourself, again, I encourage you not to go any more than 3, 1 day at a time, right? 1 step at a time. So what are the strategies that you are now going to think about and employ in order to reach those goals, right? So if it's you're going to get up and go to every class every day, whether it's virtually or physically, and that means, okay, one of my strategies is to set my alarm for 7:30, not 8:30. Another one of my strategies is to go to bed and have my screens turned off by 10:30. And maybe another strategy is you're going to get not a roommate, you're going to get a friend or somebody to text you at 8:10 and say, hey, are you up? You ready to go? Yep. So those are maybe some of your sub goals or behaviors or your strategies in order to help you reach those goals. And then the second piece that I want to talk to you about is the tracking of your goals. And this is a big piece for me. Admittedly, it's probably because I'm a very visual person. And I was thinking about this earlier today and I was laughing because, again, as I mentioned, I'm the mom of 2. They are now adults, but I remember the sticker chart. I don't know if any of you had one when you were younger, but it was, the sticker chart that was used for toilet training. So, yep, I went there, brought you back to early days. And I remember that both of my sons had a great big piece of Bristol board that was on the wall in the bathroom, calendars sort of set out, and any time that they made it to the bathroom, they got a sticker. That's what I'm talking about. It doesn't need to be a sticker chart, but my goodness, if you are still triggered by stickers, then absolutely do a sticker chart. If not, maybe it's something as simple as a daily planner. That's old school. because it's tangible and it's paper. I mean, with all of the apps that you have now and have available to you, maybe you use apps. I don't know. Whatever it is that works for you. And track your goals, track your progress, so that at the end of the day or at the end of the week, you have a visual representation of how you did with tracking your success. Now, I would be remiss if I said to you, let's track your success, and I didn't say, you know what, you're going to have setbacks. And so you'll see on the slide here, again, further down, it says acknowledge setbacks. You'll notice I didn't say failures. And yeah, this is when I get into this sort of chintzy kind of quintessential, there are no dead ends, there are merely detours on the road to success. Well, you know what, it's true. It's absolutely true. You can have a day that seems like you didn't get anything right, but the upside to that is the sun's going to come up tomorrow and you get to start again. So by having a tracking mechanism, you can visually see the days that you've had setbacks and the days where you didn't accomplish any of the goals or any of the objectives that you set for yourself. You're going to have them, and you're only human, and that's okay. Just remembering that every day is another start. So celebrate your successes when you have them. A really cool way to do that. So I have an Apple Watch now that I have an Apple Watch now where I track, you know, how many steps I take and all that kind of stuff. And that's motivating to me. So that's motivating for me. Sorry, I'm a little distracted. I'm just getting a message here that if you have questions, they need to be directed to acadiaforyou@acadiau.ca. I realize I haven't taken a breath yet, but I will get back to questions in a second. So an Apple Watch for me, I hesitated getting it because I was like, you know what, I'm not that type A personality enough to really want to watch it and all that kind of stuff. But now that I have it, it is triggering for me. It is motivating for me. It's a little annoying as well. Like sometimes when I'm sitting here and it says breathe, I'm like, I am breathing and I don't need you to remind me to. But it does sort of say, you know, time to move, time to get up. But I got to tell you, it feels really good when I go for like a 5-kilometer walk and it says you finished your ring today. And I'm just like, woo! So that's the kind of visual representation that I'm suggesting you look for. It could be as simple as a sticker chart. It could be as extreme as an Apple Watch or anything in between. But it holds you accountable and to yourself. The other part of it is you can share it, right? So that's where I was going with the Apple Watch piece. My son has one as well, and we share, right? So he sees when I do my workout and finish it, and I see when he finishes his. And if I'm having a day where I didn't get to mine and he did his, I'm like, he's ahead of me again, that kind of thing. So when you share it with others, sometimes it triggers some successes and some motivation for you as well. So I don't know if I've explained it well, if I've triggered some questions for you. I'd be happy to hear questions. Again, I've been told the chat function is not active currently. So if you have a question, please direct it to Acadia for you, and that's the number 4 at acadiau.ca. So again, Acadia for you, the letter U, at acadiau.ca. And also, it doesn't have to be questions. So if you have a discussion point, you know what, by all means, if I said something and you go, nah, I don't agree, or I tried that and it didn't work, or whatever, I'm happy to welcome discussion points as well. So I'm not sure what to do at this point, Danny. I know you're online with me, you're on the back end there. But happy to, as I say, welcome any questions. I can also ask folks who are on the back end of this organization and schedule whether or not they're able to share my slides with you so that you can sort of process the information and maybe start to think about how you can begin to build that sort of that goal setting schedule or goal setting table that you set for yourself. But always happy and welcome any questions, whether or not it's today or when you get on campus, or even if it's virtually between now and the time you get on campus. So I'm going to, I don't know what I'm going to do here. Can I unshare my screen? There we go. And let me see. So I don't know. I don't think I'm able to accept chat or accept questions in the chat function. And I don't know if Hannah has received any by Acadia for you at acadiau.ca or not. Maybe what I should have put on my first slide was contact information for me as well. So I said my name was Oonagh, rhymes with tuna, but it's not spelled that way. It's OONAGH.Proudfoot, exactly as it sounds, at acadiau.ca. And just a little background, or just to finish off, because I don't want to keep you longer if we don't have any questions, is just to follow that up by saying, again, I mentioned a couple of times that I have two sons, both of whom attend Acadia University now. One is going into his 5th year and one into his 2nd year. So certainly I'm familiar with that transition still through my kids, but also I mentioned having received or having succeeded in getting my master's at Acadia, and my master's was in transition from high school to university and lifestyle choices. So a little bit of background information on that as well, and happy to share it at any point I can. And I have just been notified that Danny says we can forward any of the questions to you if we get any later on. So just want to thank everybody for being here today. I hope I have shared some tidbits that are going to be helpful for you. When you get to Wolfville physically and you've done your quarantine, I am in a big, white, beautiful looking house on Main Street, 512 Main Street, called Alumni Hall. And even though I am the executive director of alumni, which means once you graduate from here, I'm going to follow you for the rest of your lives, it doesn't mean that I'm not here for you when you begin your studies in September or in a couple of weeks' time. So thanks very much for having me here today, and I guess I'll call it a wrap.